Hi, my name is Alexander Stewart, professional boxer and trainer. I began boxing at 11 years old. I trained with a neighbor who was interested in boxing. He knew I was interested in boxing. He started training me. A guy named John DeLucia, who passed away a few years back. I stayed with him for about 2 years. And then I went to a place called Doc Fry Center, which is in Orange County, New York. There was a lady named Carol Chichester, who was like a second mother to me. She knew that I liked boxing, so she built a gym inside the rec center for me at the age of probably 12, 13. So I trained there for several years too. I also taught the younger kids boxing there as well. While I was there, I happened to meet a police officer named John Butch Clapp, who was a friend of my mom's, and he was a police officer from Florida, New York. He knew that I liked boxing, so he took me up to meet Mr. Patterson, Floyd Patterson. And Mr. Patterson liked the way I boxed, and eventually the next weekend I came up with my parents, and he asked my parents if I could stay and he could train me. And of course I was saying, Mom, say yes, you know. So they let me stay with Mr. Patterson on the weekends and holidays, and I stayed up there and began my training, and eventually stayed there every weekend, every holiday for the next 3 years. And that's where I had my first amateur fights in Orange County Park, big park, where I had my first fight with Mr. Patterson. Then I had a second fight with Mr. Patterson at Paramus, New Jersey, and did well. I won those fights. At 17, I graduated from high school, and I went into the service. At the request of my father, my family's all military. And Mr. Patterson wanted me to stay out and turn pro, but I decided to go in. Tracy Patterson, who was his adopted son, I lived with Tracy in the gym. Tracy lived there when I trained there. And Tracy turned professional at 17. And I didn't regret it, because I'm a soldier, and I love fighting, and I could fight in the service, and that's what I did. Fought for the military from 1984 to 1992. I fought in Korea, which I won 4 championships in my first year in the service, which was great. It was good. I was in great shape. Fighting with all pros. At Mr. Patterson's gym, there was all pros there. I was the only amateur besides Tracy. So we got to train well and learn how to fight the correct way, and ended up doing really well in the service. Left Korea, went to El Paso, Texas. I would go I was on the Army boxing team in Texas, and I would go to Mexico, which we were only 15 minutes away. So I would travel to Juarez, Mexico, in the Mijo Boxing Club, and I'd box there. And so I, got several fights there as well. 3 years there. In '87, I went to Germany. I fought in Germany from 1987. Fought a guy named Billy Travers, who fought in the Olympics in '88, knocked him out. Never had a chance to go to the Olympics because of my military duties, my responsibilities. But my Olympics was when I fought Billy Travers in Heilbronn, Germany, and I ended up knocking him out in the second round. When I got out of the service in '92, I was in the National Guard. I was in the service for a total of 17 years. I ended up training with at the Triple Threat, Roy Jones, Charles Murray, Ray Mercer, Al Cole, and I trained with those guys for approximately 2.5 years, and was some of the best training I ever had, because these are top ranked guys. Roy Jones and them, they're camp managers. Coach Merkerson, they took me in and made me one of them, and I trained with them and developed my skills and got a lot better. Eventually, I had some pro fights. During my pro career, I ended up with Lyme disease, so it kind of stopped a lot of my fighting. Almost to the point where it almost took my life. But I fought back from there. The doctor said if I wasn't in good shape, I'd probably be gone. But I'm here. I'm still here, and I'm here for a reason. Eventually from there, I ended up moving up here in 2005. Found out they had a gym around here. The first thing I looked for was a gym. Met up with Ryan and those guys in 2006 or 2007, around there, and began training those guys. I trained with Randy the Wolf Smith, who's doing really well. John Jones, who was eventually there, and now I'm here in the gym here, and training with some of the great fighters in here. These are top caliber guys up here. These fighters here are they're hungry, they're ready to go. They come here and they know it's business, and they know it's time to get busy when they come to the gym. What I do is I observe each guy that I train and see what kind of skills he has. A lot of the guys come from a wrestling background, so they don't really have much of a boxing background. So what I do is I I take them one step at a time. The same way I was taught, I teach them. You start from the ground up. A lot of the guys that do MMA don't really have a base. They're more into martial arts and the wrestling stance, which is a bit wider than boxing. So I teach them to have their feet shoulder width apart, always keeping their hands up, making sure they have their balance. Teaching them starting from the jab, working with the power hand, and working with hooks, making sure the balance is correct, making sure the punches are thrown correct, and making sure they're keeping their hands up. The number one thing, keeping their hands up. And it's working out well so far. We're going to have a variety of classes here. I teach a boxing size class, so if you want to get in shape, and come on down and we'll get you in shape. I also teach kids, which I love teaching kids boxing. It's discipline. It allows them to get into a routine. So don't have to worry. The parents don't have to worry so much about them being on the street. They can come to the gym, a safe environment, clean environment. I also teach the adults, male, female adults. I'm looking to start a male and female boxing team, amateur boxing team. So I'm looking for candidates for that. So come on down, sign up. And I'm also train the MMA fighters, the professional fighters. So looking forward to getting these guys ready to fight.